Hi, this is Jeff Evans from Evans Performance Academy. We're going to be taking a look at some basics with our PC Link software so you can get started with your Link G5 or G4X system. Without further wait, let's jump in to check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our laptop style data logging found within our PC Link software. Now, we absolutely want to understand how to work with data logging. There's two different types of data logging. What we're going to cover in this training module is laptop style data logging. We also have an onboard style logger where we can record information to the onboard logging portion of our Link G5 or G4X systems. That's essentially storing the data channels and information into a file format on board. If we're coming, let's say, back into the pits off track, we can retrieve that data back and take a look at all that for tuning or diagnostic or data analysis. So we have these two different style logging options with our Link. We will cover laptop logging in this training module, learning the ins and outs. Next module will be covering the onboard logging because that's going to be set up a little bit different, and there are some things that we need to understand with that onboard style logging in terms of configuration and setup. So let's jump in here and talk about some basics with our data logging. Now, a data log is going to capture in the laptop format all of the channels available in your Link, which is actually really nice. With the onboard logging, we have a limited amount of space, so we have to be careful of how many channels we actually log. With the laptop logging, we're limited to a maximum of 40 hertz or 40 samples per second for every channel that we can log. When we're working with the onboard logger, we can log up to 1,000 hertz or 1,000 samples per second. So we can have a lot more resolution in the data in the onboard logging option. The laptop logging option, though, at 40 hertz is sufficient for general tuning and troubleshooting. So we don't necessarily have to be onboard logging. There's some specific situations, such as taking a look at knock control, a very fast moving type of environment and channels where we probably want to go in and use the onboard logging at 1,000 hertz so we don't miss any data information. But in this case, if we're doing general tuning, let's say our fuel tuning, we can laptop log and we're completely fine with that. We don't need to worry about anything. Now, before we jump in and taking a look at how to record and stop a data log, I want to talk about the setup for our laptop logging because we have some options and we have some things we can change. You want to make sure that your laptop and your software is set up so that if you start to laptop log, it is going to log all of the channels. So we're going to go up here to logging, and we're going to go down here under setup logging. Now, we have two windows here. We have a window that's going to be ECU logging that's associated to the onboard logging. Then there's PC logging. We want to make sure for right now, because we're talking about the laptop logging option, the PC logging window here is what we want to have open. Right now we have it set to a 40 hertz rate. That's going to be 40 samples per second. That's the maximum sample speed for all the channels being logged. We can reduce that down here to slower logging sample speeds. That's not ideal. It's going to be some of these 5 hertz or 1 hertz, 1 samples per second. That's going to be moving too slow to really be effective and capture all the data information on a faster moving channel, such as engine speed. Something like engine coolant temperature or intake air temperature, 1 samples per second or 1 hertz might be sufficient, but trying to capture a faster moving channel, it's not going to work. So we want to leave it on the default of 40 hertz. If your software is on something else other than 40, make sure you set it to 40. The next thing we want to take a look at here is the online sample history, add to start of PC log. What this is going to do, as soon as we hit the logging option, it'll include the 100 samples before we started the log. It'll actually include that in the data log. That way it captures a little bit more information than what we need. So if you hit the data log button, and you may have inadvertently cut off somewhere you wanted to see, it'll actually capture a little bit more of that. 100 samples as the default here works, so if yours is something else, you can put it to 100 and that should be good. We also want to have here, when opening log file, zoom all. That means that when we're opening the log file within our time plot to review it, it'll essentially give you the full zoomed out look, and then we can zoom in or out within the log file to take a look at some specific bits of information. So we want to have that set on zoom all. The other option here under control, it's currently set to manual. Manual allows you to go in and actually go up to logging and do the start, record, and stop feature to actually initiate the log and stop the log. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a keystroke for the data logging to start or stop. That's something that I definitely like to see Link have Other software has that, so I don't have to go up into the menu here and go in and actually click on it to start and stop. Alternative to that, if we didn't want to go through that drop-down menu, you can initiate your logging to start or stop based on your control parameters here. So for example, we can say throttle position is greater than, let's say, 5%. So anything higher than 5% throttle, it'll initiate a laptop log automatically. So it's something that you may want to set up here based on RPM map or throttle position. For right now, I'm going to keep it on manual because I typically like to have more control over when I want to log, but that is an option to automatically start to log. The next big important detail here is to make sure that we have all of the channels being logged. Now, you're probably not going to be using more than, let's say, a third or a quarter of the total runtime channels that we have available in our link, but it's important that we log all of them because at any given time, you may turn something on or off in your calibration file in terms of a feature or function. You want to capture all the data associated to that feature or function. Let's say you turned on, maybe you didn't have it on initially, you're turning it on, let's say traction control, for example. By logging all the channels, you're guaranteed with the laptop logging to capture the information and not lose the data. We can be selective of what we actually choose in our logs parameters. However, you may miss something inadvertently, especially if you're working with a wide variety of vehicles and configurations and setup with link tuning. I work with a ton of different engines and ton of different configurations. So at any given time, I may want to take a look at, let's say, my APS main and sub. That's going to be my drive-by-wire main and sub assemblies. I want to go and take a look at what that's doing if I'm drive-by-wire. If I'm throttle cable based, then I don't necessarily even care about these. These channels don't do anything. However, if I'm drive-by-wire, I don't want to think about having to come in here and enter the logged parameters in here that I want to take a look at. So if you do not have all of the log channels in here, you're going to want to go ahead and add them. Best way to do this, we can go A to Z and allow all the parameters to actually appear. We can highlight all of these parameters, so shift and then the down arrow, we can highlight every single one of these and then use the transfer button to transfer it over to the logged parameters. That way, we're able to go in and log everything. Now, if you're really just tuning your own vehicle and you know you're not using certain features or functions, you may not want to go in and log every single parameter. You might want to log things that are more pertinent to what you're doing. So you can actually go into this main list if you have everything populated and start taking things off of the list. So for example, if we just run down here, you know you're not using aux, let's say 10 through 19 here. You can highlight this, let's just say here aux 10, and use your shift and then the down arrow and highlight everything you don't want to see. And then you can go to remove items, which will bring them back over here to available parameters. So you are able to transfer things back and forth and get rid of things or add to your logging list. Again, I do so many different vehicles and so many different configurations that I like to log everything. It does increase your file size, so be aware if you are logging a lot of parameters at this maximum sample speed of 40 Hertz, your file sizes will be larger. If you reduce your sampling rate and your number of parameters logged, it'll reduce your file size as you're generating that log data. Keep that in mind. All right, let's click OK. Now that we know that our setup and configuration is good in our logging for our PC laptop logging, let's take a look at the next step here. So right now I have my Link G5 on an engine simulator. I'm simulating the engine speed here as 900 RPM. Now all the other parameters here have not been set up yet. So engine coolant temperature, throttle position, intake air temperature, lambda. We're not finding anything is populating in these channels because I have not configured inputs and outputs yet. We'll be getting into that in future training modules. Right now, I just wanted to have some type of a moving parameter here, 900 RPM, I simulated engine speed, so that I could just go into this tutorial and just show you kind of what to expect with doing some PC laptop logging. So right now in this runtime value list, this is showing me the live data as I'm connected to my link box. We can see right here it's showing I'm online up in the upper right hand corner. We can't data log in the offline mode, we have to be online. Now the next step, in order to capture a data log, going up here to logging, assuming you didn't go into your setup logging and configure that so that it logs off of map pressure, throttle position, or engine speed, so it automatically logs. Assuming you're doing the manual logging, we can go here to record. Now when we do this, notice the time plot down here and the parameters list. The data here is moving around. So it's actually streaming and capturing the data to a file that we're able to save, and then we can play this data and information back. Now, just so I can demonstrate this real quick, I'm gonna have the engine speed change here a little bit so we can see that on screen. Again, I'm just simulating this on the engine simulator just so we can take a look at this. So we see that's moving around. I'm gonna have kind of a different point of reference looking at our graphically plotted data. Now, when I'm done capturing the data log, that might be capturing it for idle, for driving, for a wide open throttle pull, whatever the conditions your logging is going to be. We're gonna go here to logging, and then we can go to stop. Now notice, the time plot is showing here what we just captured. It's showing that I was logging from 0 seconds to approximately 40 seconds. That's how long we had that data logging capturing for. What we're noticing is we go into our time plot and we're scrolling across here, we're able to actually go in and take a look at what the engine speed, that's the only really moving parameter we had right here, just kind of this basic example, we're seeing that's moving. Now, what we can note about this is that the time plot, as we're going through here, as we're kind of panning through this PC log, this time plot, this actual red marker, this cursor position, this is paired to our parameter list at the same time. So notice, as I'm scrolling through here, the parameter list, which is associated to the data log, is moving in conjunction with our cursor right here. So the time plot and parameter list are paired together. So when we play back the data, we can take a look at it and just scroll through the time plot here, and we can take a look at all of the channels at that given snapshot, wherever this is placed within the actual time plot and log file. The other nice thing here is that this cursor ties together every single table and every single other parameter in terms of what we can look at as we're scrolling through here. It ties together, and everything here is working in unison together. So let me just demonstrate something real quick. If we're taking a look at our fuel table here, for example, we're in our fuel tuning window. If I click on the table and click H, notice right now that it's gonna put a position where I'm at in the table. Notice here, this cursor is moving around. It's moving to where I'm actually operating at. So we can see that fairly clearly. Now, what we're finding in this situation is that the MGP, or manifold gauge pressure, that's the load input to the fuel table. We can see that right here. We're seeing that it's calculating negative 98.1 kPa. It's actually essentially operating here in this very first row. That's why we see that this cursor, as I'm scrolling through here, is kind of just moving along. It looks like this just singular row right here, just kind of tracing along. Normally, if I had the MGP calculated correctly, if I had the map pressure set up correctly, then it would go in here and it would pair to wherever we're operating at in the data log, and you'd see a cursor position scrolling through there. So the takeaway from here is that with the cursor position in our time plot from the log that we just captured, this cursor will tie together all of the parameter lists in any page that we're looking at here. So for example, if I jump to closed loop fuel, I have another time plot in here, and then we'll find that I have a parameters list so we can see what's going on with that. For example, spark timing. We're gonna find that it's gonna scroll through, or you can scroll through it here. The parameters list on the left is showing us what's going on at that particular point of reference and where we're at in the table. So everything is tied together in the link, and it makes navigating and figuring things out very, very efficient. The layouts that I have here, the page layouts, are set up that way. So that functionality is present, and I wanted you to be aware of that. So let's click back on the table, click H to bring back in the color gradient on the table. So we know at this point that we have the log file generated. We can see it's present right here. If I close the software out, so let's just say I'm done here, close it out, you'll lose the data log. We want to actually save it to a file. The file exists here in our PC Link software, but it's not stored permanently to our laptop. So we actually want to go take that next step and save it, just like a calibration file. Now, how do we do that? Pretty simple. When we go here, we'll jump into our log file manager. What we're going to find is it's showing us here, in this case, we have one data log right here, and it's showing PC log data. We want to click on this. And then we're going to go here up to the top and say save log file. This is now going to prompt me to save the data log file to a folder. Here we can see it's trying to automatically save to the C drive, Link G4X, PC Link G4X log file folder. We may not want to save it to this particular folder. We can change the location So we're not saving it right here. This is the default where the software is going right to. Let's go in and take a look at how we can change that location. So if I go here to options and I go here to preferences and I go here to directories, we can find log files, use this directory. This is where we can change where the data logs are saving to. So if you want to be a little bit more specific with this and not use that generic path or link, we can go in and change it. Let's do that real quick. What I'm going to do is use the My Documents section. I have an area here for link that I want to go in and work with. And then in this case, I have a project folder, EPA G5 K24 Civic. I want to go in and actually save to this folder. Now in here, I can go in and create a new subfolder and I can call this data logs. So we have that. And then we're going to double click on here and it's going to allow me to select this as the folder location to where all of my log files will go. So if I'm working with a particular project, I'm going to point all of my log files here to this specific project folder. Okay, let's go ahead and click select folder. And now we can click OK and we can find that it's going to go to the right location. Now I can go either to Log File Manager and then into clicking on PC Log Data and then Save, or alternative, I can go to Logging and then Save Log File, which will save it to that automatic directory location, or I can go to Save Log File As. The difference here is that the Save Log file will generate this generic naming, PC Data Log 2024, the date, the timestamp. This is going to put all that information right into the log file title, so we know exactly what's going on in the file here. Let me cancel this. I can actually go in and change that as a custom name. If I do logging, save file, log file as, and I go in here, I can save this as a custom name. And I could have changed that name as well before, but this will allow me to go in and save over that and change it to a custom name. So I'll click save here so we can go ahead and take a look. Now, the next thing, we can have multiple data log files open. So it may not just be one file that we want to take a look at. Let me go and just look at this real quick. So Log File Manager. I can retrieve data log files. So let's say this is the log file we just captured, but I want to take a look at a log file from earlier in the day, or maybe the previous month for the vehicle. If I go into the log file open, I'm able to go in and actually retrieve that. In this case, just kind of poking through some of this, let's see if we can find any log files in any of these other folders. I may not have saved anything into these folders. I know back in here to the C drive in that original location, let's just jump back in here, we did have some log files. Let's go ahead and have here, and we can grab just another log file. Let's go ahead and open that. So here, if we pan back, this is another log file. So we can take a look. Looks like a dyno pool. I label it 600 wheel horsepower. It must have been a pool from some vehicle I was tuning that was associated to making that power level. Now, I have two log files open in my time plot here. If we go into the log file manager, that is the purpose of the log file manager, allowing me to go in here and take a look at the logs. If I want to go back in here and take a look at, we can see here the PC logged, that's the file name. If I want to take a look at this file, I can switch back and forth. So we want to click on which specific log file we want to take a look at, and we can have a lot of different log files open in here. So we're able to flip back and forth and take a look at that data within our time plot, within our window here. If I want to go ahead and close the data log, I can simply grab the log file here, and I can go up to the top and I can say close log file and close the selected log file. Yes, we see that disappears. So now what's available here is just this 600 wheel horsepower log file that we just previously opened. So we have the ability to open and close data logs. That same redundancy can be found right here. So open log file, close log file. We can close all of the log files as well, so we can change that. So we can do the file save, save as, open, close, pretty basic there. Now, there is another detail here that I want to talk about, log file details. Now, whatever log file we have open, let's click on this. We are able to go in here and put details associated to the log file, the driver, vehicle, engine, notes, environment, so the location, event, log date, log time, weather notes. We can go in here and enter all that information in. If we click OK, once we capture the data log, then we save it, that'll be paired to the log file. So when we open it up again, we can retrieve and take a look at the specific details associated to when we capture that data log. That's really good to keep yourself organized and put more specific information into a log file so that if you open it up, let's say a couple months from the time you captured it, you're not going to remember those details. You can actually pair that with the log file, which is nice. It's the same idea here as the show memo option associated with the calibration file. So this is associated to my file right now when I open it up. It's giving me the details of the engine and some of the fuel system looks like I entered in here. So just basic information, but it is very important that we keep track of that. And that allows us to keep ourselves organized. So the memo notes option is with the calibration file. Again, we can do that same exact thing here if we jump in and we set to the log file details. So look real quickly here. If I go in, record the log, we can see here it's recording right now, logging. We're gonna go to stop, go back in here, log file details. I can enter that information in, click OK, and then that's paired to the log that I just captured. Then I can go into the log file manager or into logging and say save. That'll be stored with that log file. Hopefully it makes sense. So the laptop logging is the most versatile logging we have with our PC Link software and communicating with our G5 or G4X systems. You absolutely want to use the PC logging option. It captures all the channels, it logs at a reasonable rate, and it'll give you all the information you could possibly need to go back in, taking a look at, again, data analysis, calibrating, tuning, troubleshooting. This is my primary means of doing actual logging with the Link system. Again, the onboard logging, I use it, but it's more for track vehicles or in those special circumstances where I have to log at extremely high sampling rates to see something like knock control. Sometimes I need to see some specific information with it, and I can't do that unless I'm logging at ultra high sampling speeds. Okay, so that's gonna be it, taking a look at working with our PC or laptop style logging. Thanks for watching our tutorial. If you're interested in learning more about how to tune your Link G5 or G4X system, check out the video description below where you can find links to our school, some promo codes to get you started and save some money. If you're interested in learning more about Link engine management products, also check out the video description below. That's gonna wrap it up here. I hope to see you guys in our school.